Welcome to another episode of The Weird Way. I am jumping on here for another solo cast. That is right. You are lucky you are just getting me here today. And there's been a couple of these lately, which has felt really, really good. And I want to jump in and share more about my current journey because for me, this is something that I believe holds a lot of value for others on this path of conscious creatorship and allowing themselves to step into their purpose and what they're here to do. And, depending on where you're at, you may not be sure of what that is yet. And I believe there's still got to be a lot of value in this journey because I'm going to be sharing a little bit about what it's taken me to get to where I am. And this is something I'm speaking to because there is an intuitive knowing that I believe often calls to us. I've got a saying, it's not mine, but first the feather, then the brick, and then the bus. And for a lot of people, they hear the feather or they feel the feather, and it can take some time before they actually acknowledge it. And generally that takes getting hit by the bus. And for me, this was definitely my case. And I don't believe it has to be. And when I speak to this, why I'm speaking to this is because I believe that tickle is coming from our souls, our daemon, that part of ourself that wants us to follow that thread that's like, oh, there's so much more here for us. And for me, it has been the biggest thing when I've said yes to that. And sometimes the saying yes to it isn't exactly what we'd like to do, or there may be resistance around it, or it may be scary. And it's like, who am I to do that? I did a YouTube video this week. You can check that out on my YouTube channel. The link is in my link tree about imposter syndrome. And a big part of that is feeling like, oh, who am I to be doing this? What can I possibly share? And I can see how this can limit people in so many ways, and it's limited myself. Like when I started on this path of becoming a coach, I was like, who am I to be doing this? What do I know? I've been on my own journey, but who am I basically? And there was a lot of dissonance with that. And I explain this more in the video, and go watch that if you're looking to go into that. But the real reason I'm speaking to that is because we're living in an age where we are more and more getting called to live a life that is true for us. And I believe this is the case because we are going through a change in the collective, in the planet. And the more people that are living in alignment, the more that it creates a change across the planet, and this allows a collective shift to occur. And this can be scary for people because for me, what alignment has done is completely altered my reality. And I just got off the podcast with Nat today, and we're speaking about the grief that can occur when we step into a new timeline. And this can be scary. And this, I believe, is what a lot of people don't want to face when they get their calling from their soul, because it may involve leaving relationships. It may involve saying goodbye to old friendships, way of being, work, safety, and all these things that have been conditioned into us to hold us where we are. And if we're in this state, it's not going to serve us, because truthfully, we're getting shown the way. And at times I fight this, I resist this, but then in my being, I know that something else is guiding me, because I couldn't be here without it. And this is where I'm going to be sharing is a few times on my journey, I've said yes to my soul. A lot of the time I've said yes to my soul, but there's been experiences that have truly shifted my reality and shifted my way of being, and allowed me to step into a new timeline and change who I've been and change my identity and be like, oh, there is more possibility. And I believe most people who are listening to this are seeking that for themselves. They're wanting to expand the possibility within their own life and see, oh, we are capable of more. I can follow my purpose. I can create the lifestyle I want from my purpose, and I can live the dream that is instilled within my soul, and I can give that dream to the world as a gift, because this is what we're here to do. And this is what gets me. There's been a lot of shame and conditioning in our culture which tells us to play small, be small, and just get in our box, because if we are too bright, we are destroying other people's perceptions, and we should feel guilty for having too much, for abundance, for joy, because if we're too much and other people are sad, that makes us bad. And especially here in Australia, there is this tall poppy syndrome which restricts and holds people back. And it is the greatest tragedy because we are here to be bright, and sometimes the scariest thing is to be bright, because when a person is bright, when they're willing to be seen and show themselves to the world, what that means is they are a beacon in the dark, and this will attract everything from other people seeking the light, but those seeking to destroy the light as well. And this is like any time you step out of the lane, and like if you're looking to go on purpose, it's going to mean you are seen in some way, shape or form. And at some point, this is going to mean that there may be negative comments, judgments against you, and people say, oh, you did this and you're that. And as being the light, to stay in the light, you must learn to alchemize this and transform this so that you can hold that light while the rest is occurring. Because what that ultimately is doing is testing how much light you can hold. How much are you willing to hold another person's judgment? How much are you willing to be yourself and say, this is who I am, and show up in love, even when the world is against you? Because only you can determine if you do that. And this has been one of my biggest lessons along this way. And I can remember when I started my journey, there was a few shifts that occurred that really allowed me to do this. And the first piece was saying no to what I didn't want anymore, because this was the first time that I was willing to really go against the conditioning that had been ingrained within me. And this is an important piece to actually live true, because look, whoever you are, you've been conditioned to a way of life that comes from your family and society and culture that says you need to be a certain way. And by being this certain way, you'll get the love, you'll get the safety, you'll get the money, and then everything, you'll live a good life. And yet we see in this, not many people actually live that good life. There's suicide rates are higher than they ever have been. Mental health is being effective in a very negative way. And this is because we are denying that part of ourselves that calls to us, that part of our soul. And so for me, saying no to what I got told to be, which at the time was an engineer. I didn't get told to be this, but my conditioning told me that this is what I thought I had to be to get the love and the validation that I wanted in this life. And it was like, oh, this is safe, so I'll do this. And I realized that wasn't who I wanted to be. I was unhappy. I was miserable. I was depressed. And that involved me changing and being willing to change who I am. And so I said no to that. And after I graduated university, I just decided, no, I'm not going to go get a job as an engineer. I went and got a job as a pool boy and just started living that life. I was like, oh, I don't know what I'm doing. I was going through my spiritual awakening, but I was like, that doesn't feel right for me right now. I was not happy there. And so I sat in that void for a while, not knowing what to do. And then I got the idea to travel. I got the idea to seek something else because I knew I was looking for something. I didn't know what at that time. And each stage of this, there was like a calling to go experience, to be willing to go into the unknown and just say yes to something. So at the time, what I did, I packed up my car and I left. I had no plan. I had no destination, and I just traveled the east coast of Australia. And I was a little hippie living out of my car. And this was a new identity. I had to let go of who I was, because it was like, oh, this is who I can be. Okay. Let's do this. I guess I can do this. And I was seeking at that time. And eventually that led me to feeling more and more lost and just disconnected from the world. I was very in the upper realms of consciousness and I felt ungrounded. There was a lot of grief. There was a lot of processing. There was quite a few psychedelic experiences, which I was processing a lot, but I didn't have the structures or the teachers or the support to help ground that in and actually bring that back from the mountaintop. If you're familiar with the idea that we travel to the mountaintop to receive teachings, but in this world, and I believe this, we actually not meant to stay at the mountaintop. We're meant to come back down from the mountain to bring our gifts back to the world and to allow a collective healing to occur, because it's very safe up the top of the mountain where we can meditate and we can stay in ourself and in our bodies, and there's no distraction and all of that. But the real work begins when we come back into this world. And so during that time, I got really lost, and I started praying. And I can remember the night before a big shift occurred. I was praying to the moon. I ended up taking some mushrooms. I was out in the forest. I had a fire, and I was like, I'm lost. And it was kind of that second rock bottom. The first one was when I was depressed and cutting myself, and it's a big shift that led to my spiritual awakening. And I prayed for something more. And this for me is big piece. I prayed. I was like, give me hope. Give me something. I can't do this anymore, because I truly believed I couldn't. And so I prayed to the moon. I asked her to show me the way. And the next day I listened to a podcast. And it was a podcast I regularly listened to. And the woman on there, Hallie Rose, said, hey, I'm taking on clients. I'm becoming a coach. And I believe I can serve people. And I was like, I know that's me. And I said yes to that, because I could feel this intuitive guidance that was saying, hey, come do this thing. And at the time, it was $7,000 for this coaching 3 month container. And that at the time was everything I had in my bank account. And it was like, oh, can I trust? Because my logical mind was telling me, no, don't do that, Finn. Don't step into that unknown. Stay safe. Stay in what you've known. Just be lost. But there was a part of me that told me, hey, I know there's more. This isn't it. You have a vision. And right now you're not living in alignment with that. And your soul is hurting. And something is calling to you. And you need to listen to it. And this is part of it. And it scared me. It scared me beyond anything to invest that amount of money in something I had no idea what I was about to be a part of. And this is where I speak to intuition and knowing that sometimes we need to take that leap. But there was a building process until it got to that. And I was like, okay, this is the intuitive step. This is action. And this is what I can see that has allowed me to grow in a way perhaps others haven't been able to grow in the same time frame, is my internal world has shifted dramatically, and that shift has resulted in a change of external action. So I'm a big believer of so within, so without, and this is how I live my life. I know that to change my reality, I first must shift it on the internal level and change my mindset, change how I'm viewing, work through any emotional or energetic blocks within my being to then allow the new reality to form. And that all starts within. And yes, that work is a fundamental and for me the first step, but then that needs to change the external action, and we need to create the conscious change and integrate that into our daily lives. Because if we are doing that internal work and then not shifting our external reality, well, there's actually been no change, and it's been a mental masturbation. And this is where a lot of people can get stuck in the world of meditation and spirituality. It's like, yes, I can do the internal work. I can work on my father and my mother wound, and I can heal generational trauma. But has that changed your relationship with these people? And this for me is something I continue to embody of like, oh, I'm doing all this work, but how is my external reality actually changing? Because for me, that is what I want to shift, because I do want to experience a life that is abundant, that is beautiful, and I have deep and a depth of conversation and with community and those around me. And this is the invitation when you get that guidance, because for me, it was to invest in this coach and say yes to that calling and be like, ooh, here I go. And that really led to a series of events where I met one of my teachers, a dear friend, who helped me guide me in the shamanic ways, and all of these different things occurred from that moment. But without that initial saying yes to something bigger than myself, to trust in something more than myself. And if you're listening to this, you may have that feeling that you are getting guided to say yes to something, to do something, and it may feel like, oh, that's big, or it's scary. I don't know what's on the other side of that. I don't know what will happen if I say yes to that. And my invitation is to trust, because I believe our desires, our knowing is sacred, and it is trying to guide us in the way that we are meant to live. And when we say yes to that, it takes us on the path that we're meant to live. So this is an invitation to trust that intuitive knowing that is deep within your soul, and actually say yes to that, to allow that to occur, and give yourself the permission to follow your own knowing. Because this is a big thing I teach as a coach, and what I really want to embody is, yeah, I can coach people, I can tell them things, but it's not my role to tell people what to do, but to guide people back to themselves, because only we can know what's right for ourselves. And this is a big thing. And along my journey, no one could make these choices for me. I felt like I wanted to ask, hey, is this the right thing? And sometimes it's important to ask for reflections and feedback and be like, okay, what do you think of this? But then use discernment and distillment to actually take that on and determine if this is a path for ourselves, and choose from that place, because this is how we live an empowered life, and this is how we actually live true to ourselves, is by discerning and making a choice for ourselves. So right now you're listening to this, and I'm telling you to trust that intuition and trust that calling, and ultimately that is your choice. You know if that's the choice you should make, and you know if it speaks loud, and if it's meant to be, that you need to follow that. Only you can know. And you know what will happen if you say yes to that, and you don't know what will happen, but you know the feeling. And if you say no to that, feel into what that would do if you said no to that thing that was calling you. Because for me, that is a guidance from my internal world. If there's something that's scary to me and I'm like, I know I need to do that. And I'm like, what would happen if I said no to that and I feel contraction in my body? Well, then I know I'm meant to open to life and see what's possible. And this isn't to shame the other choice, but to give it compassion and knowing that, it's okay to make the other choice. It's okay to choose something different. And from there, make this your choice. And for me, this has happened many, many times where there's been that intuitive moment that's asked me to say yes. And I know without it, I wouldn't be here. And I feel like that is what a lot of people deny. And I speak of this as the daemon, the genius, the holy guardian angel, the higher self. Like, you can give it whatever name you want. And yet we're always receiving guidance. It's just our ability to say yes to it and open to that possibility that there is something more and that we are guided to something more. And my real invitation here is to follow that, because like I said earlier, it is first the feather, then the brick, and then the bus. And our souls, I do believe, came here to have a certain experience. And if we deny that experience, if we're fighting that experience, like I did when I was depressed and I was anxious, and that period of my life, I was fighting this calling to speak. I was fighting that inner part of me that wanted something more. And I was like, no, I've got to go down the 9 to 5. I've got to play it safe. I've got to do what other people expect and play the conditioning. And so I was fighting my inner self, which led to my depression. It led to my anxiety, because there was an internal conflict, and that internal conflict used a lot of my energy, which depressed me. It meant I was zapped of energy, zapped of strength, because I was like, oh, I have something here I'm meant to be given. But the other part was like, no. And there was so much internal conflict and distrust that I wasn't allowing myself to follow what was true. And this is what I see when I see depression now is, there's a calling from our soul that is being ignored right now. And this calling is singing true. And until we say yes to that, until we're willing to say yes to that, and for me, I've had resistance even since I became a coach, even up until last year. There was a part of me that was fighting this, that didn't know if I was worthy enough, that was like, oh, I don't know what happens on the other side of that if I allow myself to be seen and speak true. And there's been so many conditions and trauma and like, oh, shame around my voice and being afraid that what do I have to offer? And it's like, no, just trust. Trust that the channel is clear and trust what comes through is what people need to hear and involve in getting out of my own way. And I couldn't have got there if I didn't say yes to my soul. And at the start, I didn't know why where I was going. I didn't know I was going to end up here. I've shared this before. I've desired to start this podcast for at least 3 years, but probably previously I could have, but it wasn't the intention, or it wasn't the right time, or maybe I just said no to it right then. But I said yes to other things, and that's what's led me here. And I think a lot of people want to know where they're going on their journey. They want to know the destination, how it's going to look, that they're going to be happy, that they're going to be healthy, that they're going to be abundant, they're going to be safe, they're going to have the house, they're going to have the money, and they're going to have the kids and the white picket fence, and it's all just going to work out perfectly. And the truth is that's not guaranteed to anyone. It doesn't matter if you have a 9 to 5. It doesn't matter if you're an entrepreneur. It doesn't matter if you're following soul or spirit or your own guidance. None of that is guaranteed. Life is a mystery, and it asks us to play within the mystery. It asks us to be in life. And the more we deny this and sit on the sidelines and be like, I'm not going to play. I'm not going to be in this game. Well, the more it wants to pull us down into this game, because it's like, cool, you don't want to play? You can sit in the pain and the suffering until you say yes to that thing that is uniquely yours. And I believe we can move from pain or pleasure. And if we're willing to move from pleasure, it will change our lives. Because for me at the start, I had to move from pain. I was depressed and anxious. I was like, I wanted to get away from that. I wanted to avoid that. I wanted to go away from that. And now I'm moving from a place of pleasure, like what lights me up? What do I want to create? And this podcast, my YouTube channel, my email, all of that, I've wanted to create because I want to give value. I want to tell stories. I want to help other people along the way. That's what my coaching is about, because I am passionate about allowing other people to have this journey and hopefully not going through all the ways I had to go through to get to where I am. And I know there's a journey for each person, because we need that journey to become that person that is then capable of holding our vision. And I do believe that there is shortcuts and cheat codes that come through this form of mentors, coaches, and other people that can serve us along the way. And so this is the invitation to follow your to follow your soul, to say yes to yourself, to that part of you that knows there is more, and do what it takes to live that life that is true for you, because death is coming and we are all going to die, and we have a choice only if we are going to live true to who we are and give ourselves to this world. And I know that for me, when it comes to that moment where I'm on my own deathbed and I'm staring back into the past and I'm reflecting on my life, I'm going to want one thing. And that's to know that I lived, that I said yes to myself, and that I followed my own truth, that I was willing to put it on the line to live a life that was true for me, that I was willing to say yes to that part of me that knew I was here for something, that knew I had my own role to play within this greater weaving of the world. And so, will you say yes? Will you follow your own weird way and live a life that is true for you? I'm going to leave it there, my friends. This was a solo cast on the weird way. Let me know what landed for you, what your unique weird way is, what you are discovering about your own soul's path and your dharma, and how does your daemon speak to you, that whisper that asks you to go beyond. Let me know. Subscribe. please rate this. Let me know what landed, share, and allow this podcast to grow, because this is something that I'm passionate about, and I will continue to build this, and it means the world to me for everyone that listens and tunes in. And know that by subscribing, by sharing, you allow this podcast to grow and connect with others who can bring more value into it as well. And we can share, have deeper story, and give more value to you as well. So please let others know. Tell me your favorite episodes. Send me messages. I always love to connect and share. And just let me know what landed for you. This is Dean Bentley signing off the weird way. I love you all. Take care.